Femi Gbajabiamila resigns as House of Reps member to enable him assume the role of Chief of Staff to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The Central Bank of Nigeria directs commercial banks to trade forex freely. The death toll from Kwara boat disaster rises to 106, 144 others rescued so far. And outside of Nigeria, evidence shows M23 behind DR Congo massacre, says Human Rights Watch. An Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, urges Sudan's warring parties to stop fighting. Tonight in Politics HQ, I will be joined by Chike Ogeah, former MD, Skyway Aviation Holdings. I am Gbenga Aborowa. Stay with us. Politics HQ. We'll be right back. Nigeria Air is no longer flying, but news about it hasn't stopped flying at any point. In the latest twist to one of Nigeria's most recent debacles, former Minister of Aviation Hadi Sirika accused the lawmaker of seeking bribes for the deal. Mr. Sirika, in his attempt to clear the air, also claimed that just 3 billion naira was spent in Nigeria Air and it wasn't launched by the Nigerian government but by private investors. Many issues and questions still surround the clipped wings of Nigeria Air, especially the timing of its launch and the controversies that have continued to trail the launch. Today on Politics HQ, I have an aviation expert to further break the stories down and shed more light on the grey areas. I have the honor of having Chike Ogeah, a former MD, Skyway Aviation. He joins us here live in the studio. A warm welcome to you, sir, and thank you very much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Now, let's talk about the recent meeting by the House of Representatives Committee on Aviation. It recently alleged fraud in the unveiling of Nigeria Air and called for the prosecution of the former Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, and those associated with the project. What are the potential consequences of this sort of weighty allegations on the aviation industry in Nigeria?
Well, thank you, and I'm happy to be here. This is my first time here. Well, it is extremely unfortunate. Like you said, it is a sector I spent, a better part of my life, trying to leave a legacy, because we took the old Sky Power Aviation Handling Company, which was really a wasting government asset. And we went through a very tortuous and long, windy and challenging privatization process. And eventually we got it right. That process must be maybe the most transparent privatization process done in the annals of Nigeria history, not just in aviation, and because it ended up being by an open bid and it was an open auction, a company that was valued for about 1.2 billion. By the time we had finished adding a lot of value to it, because when I got there it was maybe under 300 million, and we sold it eventually for 5.6 billion. So that gives you the idea of the kind of value we made for government. So when now I'm hearing the kind of thing going on in the sector, it really makes me very sad. What saddens me is that we had a minister who unusually had almost 8 years in the sector to make a difference. And when he came in, I was one of the people that felt that for the first time in a long time, we had an aviator, because he has a background in aviation. And I thought, he would really be able to add a lot of value and change drastically the industry. But 8 years down the line, and we find a situation where it seemed like this minister did not, for some reason, take the critical stakeholders along with him. That is why we have a situation where the AON, which is the Association of the Operators, private operators in Nigeria, at loggerheads with him, not just about Nigerian Air, in most of the things he was doing. It seemed like he was just a lone sheriff and he was just working on his own. There are allegations of strong arm bully tactics of even not just the aviation agencies like FAN and all of that.
NACO.
No, not NACO. NACO is a private business, just like SACO is. But like FAN, like NAMA, the
Aerospace Management
That's
Agency,
right,
yes.
and all of that. And these are, there were no boards for most of them because they're all government owned and they should have boards that should to pretend them. But it seemed like everything was just being micromanaged. And the worst of it all is that the regulator of the industry, which is the NCAA, the CAA, which, aviation is a global business. It is one standard all over the world.
Very technical.
Yes, and there's no Nigerian standard, and there's no, all the certifications you get for all the audits you do for safety, for security, they are all world class. And that is why it is important that the regulator of aviation must be independent.
That's the NCA.
The
Nigerian
NCA,
Civil
that's right.
Aviation
And
Authority.
we had a situation where that could not really have been said, although we had a great Director General for the NCA, but I know he was also being encroached upon and all of that. Anyway, coming to the debacle which we seem to be facing now, which is the situation of Nigerian Air. It's very unfortunate that we have a situation where this airline, we don't know what it is, whether it's a federal government airline, whether it's a flag carrier, whether it's a national carrier, whether like it's being bandied around that it's actually for private investors, but we don't even know who the private investors are because there's no shareholding agreement to tell you who the shareholders are.
From what I've deduced so far from your discussion is there's a lot of, there's no transparency.
Yes.
And as an aviation expert, based on the information provided and what we know so far, and from your experience in the privatization of Skypower Aviation handling company, what are the global best practices and how would you assess the level of credibility surrounding the Nigeria Air project and its launch?
Well, the jury is out, and as we can all see, if we have a situation where here he says, I say, counter accusations being thrown about, then that tells you that there was no harmony in what was being done. So obviously that cannot pass any global test. The situation is that, like you rightly said, keying into exactly what you said, the major stakeholders in the National Assembly, that's the Senate and the House of Reps, should work with the ministry, and because they are the ones that make the laws. Don't forget for the country.
Functions.
And God bless you with the oversight function. And we are getting a situation where the chairman of the committee in the House of Reps actually called the whole thing a fraud. That goes a long way to go. Now the minister, in reply to that, starts to accuse him of asking 5% of the airlines. That, to my mind, is not even a bribe. Like, because everybody said 5% bribe, 5%. And he says, go and meet the private sector investors. They are the ones you should deal with. Now, who are these private sector investors? Because they are none. That's the point. So what are we saying?
So this whole audit, to use the word loosely, by the committee of the House of Representatives, is it coming a bit too late? And how can the Senate Committee on Aviation, why did they allow us to spend all this money?
No, you see, I think they themselves were in a quandary because they said each time they invited the minister, he would always not show up, give an excuse or the other, and you didn't expect them. They don't have to start jumping around looking for the minister, and so that kept on going on for a long time. And if you remember, in also the Senate, the senators, the former Senator Lujimi, the lady from Ekiti, and then there's Bala, I've forgotten the name of the other senator. He was even a member of the House of Reps. I remember when I was still in aviation, and he was also in the Senate committee. He's very knowledgeable about aviation. And they didn't call it a fraud. They were more guarded in what they had to say, but they knew that there was no transparency in what was being done, and that it was not following any kind of due process. And then you had the situation where the Nigerian operators, who should be happy to work with the minister, whether Nigerian Air is coming and all of that, that is not the issue. They are all at daggers drawn with the minister.
The minister
they even took the minister
says
to court.
They're not happy because they don't want competition.
No,
and they feel
no, but
the presence will kill.
But that is not true, because look, the skies, open skies, it is big enough for everybody. You understand? Yeah. And it's not about competition. Look at a company like Airpeace, just like what Arik was when I was in the place. These are aviation. These are airlines that, if given the enabling environment, will thrive. They are serious-minded people. Look, okay, the minister asserted on public TV that the Airpeace bought 2 777s. In fact, they leased it, and they could not continue with the lease, and the planes were lying fallow, and then it had a problem with the landing gear, and they incurred some further expenses, and it was just a mess. At the end of the day, maybe they were, I don't know how many billion naira in debt. But the MD of Airpeace and chairman, Alan Oyema, and he came out and said that is not true. We have 3 777s, and we did not, they are all outright purchased. That go to the NCAA, the records are there. So you see, when after 8 years, the industry is at this sorry pass, then you will know that something went drastically wrong there.
And one of the reasons why we're where we are today as a country is there are no consequences for
impunity.
Actions. The level of impunity.
In fact, what people say, and I listen, is that unlike what we think, that the major problem in Nigeria is corruption. Somebody said to me, Chike, that's not a major problem. A major problem is impunity. And I agree with you. You see, I have been in government for most of my life, really. And I know what that thing does to you, especially when you feel that there's this direct nexus with you and the ultimate power. That's right. You begin to feel, like you said, untouchable.
Even court cases.
And you disregard them. And you just do what you want to do. You think you are God, or you think you are next to God. And that is so wrong, because that is not what it should be. Look, we keep mouthing that mantra, government has no business in business, blah, blah, blah. All we really need to do in the present day globe, as it is, like I just told you, it's a global affair, is for government to give an enabling environment.
Regulators do your business, don't kill businesses.
Give tax holidays where you can, give, and all of that. But don't take government money and say you are doing anything. Anyway, in this case, they say they have 5%. I'm sure they have not even paid any money. Because there's no money.
I want to take you up on this.
Look at, before you finish, even in this Ethiopian air deal that they are talking about, even the Ethiopians have not brought any money, because the money they say they are bringing, they are going to bring it in lieu, they are going to bring equipment in lieu of that money. So in all of this we are saying, I don't think there's one dime on the table. So where can you say you have a company?
Mr. Ogeah, from our discussions this evening, you sound really disappointed, your countenance, and some level of irritation too. We just birthed a new government a few weeks ago, albeit an APC government still.
Yes.
But at what time do we begin to look inwards and say, look, this rot must stop. It can't be business as usual again. Because there's a whole generation of Nigerians that are coming and feel, service is to enrich myself. This guy did it, no consequences, 0 consequences, the level of impunity. What do we need to do to reset?
The good thing about this government you talked about that's just coming, yes, it's supposed to be an APC to APC government. But don't forget, the new president we have, he was in the APC. He had a president of his government and party that did not want him, that did not support him. It was obvious. We saw everything that was the whole Emilio Con charade. He had a vice president who was also running, and as far as I'm concerned, had every right to run because he was already a sitting vice president. He had a Senate president who also was running, and who the party chairman announced as the chosen candidate of the party. So in other words, the 4 topmost positions in the party were against him. and he won. That tells you that there must be something with that man, right? So what I'm saying is that though it is the same party, and look, how many days has he been there? 16 days. The moves he has made in 16 days, we didn't see it in 8 years of Buhari's government. That is the truth. So I have always been in the PDP when I was in party politics. I since have left and I'm back in the private sector. I make no apologies to anybody about that. And it's for reasons like this, because there's no fidelity in politics. Even the people that you are with will be the first to put knives on your back. Then there is no transparency. You know, everybody is trying to get one up on anybody and all of that. And I just, you say somebody once said to me that to be a successful politician in Nigeria, and I looked at myself and I said, if I became that, if I did that, I'll become unrecognizable to myself. You know what the person said to me? A very high person. He said, you have to say one thing in the morning, say a different thing in the afternoon, and deny both at night, all on the same day. And I said, how can I do that?
Your conscience wouldn't allow for it.
That's right. My conscience, my breeding, my background, everything I hold, dear to me. So I realized that, no. But at the same time, we can't walk away and say we want to leave politics for the charlatans to just mess us around. Because whether you like it or not, if we don't get involved, these are the people that will make laws for us and for our children.
Will affect your business.
That's right, yes. And our businesses and all that. So that's why, whether we like it or not, even if it's just this advocacy we do, we'll keep doing it. And we'll keep talking until we can get things to change. I have children, they don't really want to be around here. They've got the best education they can get, and they are doing whatever they are doing outside this country. But I would love my children to be here. We are getting to come a generation where very soon, where we start getting into our old age, we all will be lonely because our children will not be here. Our grandchildren will not be here. And, there's going to be that dislocation.
And there's social implications to all of that too.
That's right.
Back to this Nigeria Air project. The projected costs for Nigeria Air were estimated at $8.8 million in preliminary costs and $300 million as takeoff costs. How realistic, as someone with experience in aviation, were these figures, and what factors should be considered when assessing financial feasibility of launching a national carrier?
You see, the truth about this is that I won't even be able to comment on what you just asked. Because, like I said to you, this whole thing was shrouded in secrecy. Okay, let's come to the figures we hear about. Somebody said, is it $183 billion or something? Some crazy figure was bandied. And then the minister, by his own admission, said all that was released to him. Because I've been in government, I know how budgeting works. So forget whatever is on paper on the budget. What were the actual releases? That's what you go after. Yes. And I think by the admission of the ex-minister himself, he said maybe $3 billion has been released to him for this project. Now, $3 billion for what? He was telling us all sorts of things. Maybe they had to do some trainings. Maybe they, I don't know, yes. Because they were not giving Ethiopian Airline any money. But, he talked about all the things they needed to put salaries, to put post holders in place, and all of that. That's how that aircraft came in. Nobody went inside because I don't know what, there could have not been any crew. Even if you had gone inside, maybe you'll have seen the thing, Ethiopian Air, because it was actually an Ethiopian Airline aircraft that came. So you see, that is why it's always better to do these things transparently. Because when you don't do things transparently, then you give a lot of room for doubt and for people to start saying all kinds of things. But really, I don't have the information and I cannot say. Because they did not even say what they were doing. So there is no parameters to judge what you can say. This is what you should use to float an airline like of this manner and all of that. Look, in the last how many years, just like you said, we had United Airlines come in. Of course, Airpeace has been waxing stronger and stronger, Max Air. So a lot of Nigerian airlines, Green Africa Airlines, all of them, they all have to go through very stringent certifications from the NCAA, and they all passed to get their AOCs. But you're hearing about this Nigerian Air, where we are hearing that they have not even gone past stage 1 of the AOC.
So quite a lot left to be desired. Now let's look at, I know you've been, of course, aviation would always be your love. You can't be totally out of the industry. Looking at the current aviation sector of Nigeria, what are its potentials? If things were done properly, if we had the right enabling environment for business to thrive, what can aviation do to us as a nation and also the West Africa sub-region? Because we see what Ethiopia Airline has done with Ethiopia Air. So
that's right.
And looking at our geographic location, just
in Africa,
it wouldn't be bad for Nigeria to be an aviation hub.
There is absolutely no doubt in what you're saying. Aviation will be one of the greatest catalysts of growth for our economy if we do it well. Even in this past 8 years, I think there's been some growth. Forget about the Nigeria Air debacle generally in it. Like I told you, that's why I was talking to you about all these airlines that are coming in. And just like you said, Ethiopian, it's a flag carrier. It's really private sector, just like British Airways. You know, government maybe has very minimal shares and just, you know, give them the enabling environment to fly. And that's what we need in aviation in Nigeria. And if it is handled with the kind of seriousness that it should be, then aviation will be fantastic. Look at, first and foremost, we have to go and redo our airports. Our airports are an eyesore.
Yeah, but the Buhari administration touted the
No, fine. Okay, look at,
airports.
let's just take, for instance, the airport in Lagos. They have a very good new terminal, but it can't even be used. Because when that thing was being constructed by the Chinese, and even I think this started from even the Goodluck government, they didn't do enough feasibility to know that the kind of aircraft that should be coming there did not have enough room to maneuver and to park. That is the problem. So maybe you have to start busing people along the terminal and all of that in an international airport, and that is not allowed.
So you have a beautiful
We have a beautiful airport a beautiful terminal that you can't use. And we have to keep using that old one. If you want to travel out of the country today, you still have to go to that old terminal. So you see, these are kind of things. And how can Nigeria become a hub until you have your infrastructure in place? You have to have airports, you have to have airlines that are viable, not this 10-year, because if you look at it, most of Nigerian airlines, always a 10-year maximum, and they bust.
Yes.
You know, so we need to get rid of, and when you see companies like Airpeace doing the kind of things they are doing, we should support them, exactly. We should support them, and like, again, if you want to go to Cairo now, for instance, or you want to go to Marrakesh in Morocco, you most likely have to first get into Europe to come back to Africa. We don't have these connections in Africa. So those are the kind of things I expect. You know, there are all kinds of, there's even a Nigerian young lady, she's in charge of, she's the Secretary General of a body called AFCAC right now, which is an African aviation, one of the agencies, yes, and all of that. So I know they've been working around the clock to get all these things so that we can start having interconnectivity within Africa. Because that's the only way we can grow at the sector in Africa. Because Nigeria is not going to grow in isolation of Africa.
Yeah, I mean, if you're flying to Angola, you have to go to Lisbon in Portugal and
then come to Angola.
And we need to move beyond just mounting African unity. We need to put
that's
action
right.
forward.
It's almost like we are still being colonized by you know, our colonial masters.
Moving forward, this administration, yesterday, principal officers for the National Assembly were elected. So I guess the focus will be on ministers. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of speaking with distinguished Senator Shehu Sani of the 8th Assembly.
Okay.
And I asked him a question about, you know, this ministerial list just comes and then you ask them a few questions, bow and go. Sending a ministerial list without attaching portfolios.
Yes.
But would I use the word lucky? The aviation ministry.
Yes.
And he had a long span, like you alluded to in the last administration.
Yes. He was under the Ministry of Transportation for a couple of years when he was Minister of State to Rotimi Amechi. Then he got the aviation sector as a standalone, and he was the minister there for 4 years.
How important is it to have square pegs and Well,
very, very important. But you
well,
see,
we got an aviator. In the
that's
last
what I was going to say.
dispensation, yes.
So you see, at the end of the day, it has to do with the kind of person you get into these jobs. That's what I was going to say. Yes, it will make a lot of difference, and I have always advocated that if you want to make people, you want to appoint people into offices, you bring their resume and you say what office you want them to hold. That way you help the parliament, because they can marry the resume to where you are thinking you are going to send them and ask them the appropriate questions so they can help you. You see, but whether you bring an aviator that you want to put in aviation, okay, something like law, it has to be a lawyer, right? Most likely a senior advocate of Nigeria to be an attorney general and a minister of justice, or health, maybe a doctor or a pharmacist, whatever. So, you know, but aside from that, like your minister for works could be anybody, your minister for internal affairs, even foreign affairs, though it would be good if it's someone that has
a diplomat.
But it doesn't really matter. A diplomat might not make the best minister. It might just be a professor in history in a university somewhere or something. You understand what I'm saying? So the whole idea is to see the person and let the person be grilled by the parliament. That is very important. But when they come and they say bow and go, we're not doing this country any favor.
How do we avoid a situation like what we had in the last dispensation, where you have an emperor type of minister that overshoots his boundaries, he's interfering in things that are not necessarily his business? Where does the oversight functions come? Because these individuals don't even respect the National Assembly.
You would always get that. You will always get that, especially
until it gets to the president.
No, you see, the point is that it depends on the kind of government you have. And the way government works, it's all about the top, who is at the top. So when you have the kind of government we had, where the topmost echelons of that government was to a large extent very, very complacent, not really interested in what was going on. I don't think there was any kind of supervision. Maybe they were not even sure of what to supervise anyway. So everybody, most of those ministers were all working in silos. That's why you saw a lot of times this ministry and that ministry, they will be having issues, foreign affairs and what Abike Dabiri was doing, this and that, you know, and all those kind of things. And you had a head who really didn't care. And like I told people, is it that he didn't care or he didn't even know how to care? So when that happens, there's nothing you can do. You will get this over and over again. But the difference this time, and that's why I think I'm a little bit hopeful, is that we have a wily, very, very seasoned politician. A politician, like I told you, who knocked out not just all the heavyweights in his party that did not want him. He also knocked out a veteran politician who has been contesting for the presidency for the last 20 years or something. Exactly. And this was his first shot at it, save for the cases in court. So we don't know how that will pan out. But for today, he is the president. And I think even just from these initial moves he's made, I'm sure if he brings out a cabinet, and he's done it here in Lagos anyway, what are we saying? Yes, we saw the people, Yemi Cardozo, Wale Edu, you know, those kind of people, technocrats, feed them, Benoit Bose, and all those kind, Akabweze, and all those kind of people.
Mr. Chike Ogeah, you've spoken very well. I wish you all the best. And
thank you.
Thank you very much for honoring our invitation.
Thank you. Anytime. Thank you.